rank your favorite Trivium records, and they're all your favorites, from your 10th favorite to your first favorite in order.
I accept your challenge, Matt Heafy. Hey everyone, and welcome back, finally, to another discography ranking. Yeah, we took a little bit of time off from these for a little bit, but what better way to kick back off these discography rankings than to rank the Trivium albums. Trivium is a very big band for me. They played a very big part in growing my love of metal music. They've been a band I've been following for a long time now. Over half my life at this point has included me listening to and celebrating this band's music. So today is a very, very special day for me as I finally get to vocalize my love for this band in ranking their 10 studio albums from my top favourite to bottom favourite. This will unfortunately not include the Trivium black metal side project Ibaraki, partially because I want to keep it to strictly the Trivium catalogue, and also I'm hoping that in the future I get to do an Ibaraki ranking if they eventually get enough albums under their belt. But here's Ibaraki's shout out, because amazing black metal project. But we are indeed going to be ranking Trivium based on my own personal opinion, by the way, so if this list isn't something you agree with, then take it up with the comments, because music is all subjective and there's something to love for everyone. But we are going to go and count up from my 10th favourite to my first favourite Trivium album, starting with, at the bottom spot is unfortunately Ember to Inferno. You've got to start somewhere, and Pillar of Serpents is such an epic way to open this album. The Bleeding Skies leads into Pillar of Serpents very well in my opinion, but I do personally feel, as it is just a 30-second intro track, it could have just been slapped on the front of Pillar of Serpents in my personal opinion. But the chuggy rhythm in Pillars is absolutely brilliant. If I Could Collapse the Masses as an opening chug that just drills into you, that song also has really good hooks in it. A Revelation and Requiem are both fast and shreddy, both a lot of fun. And Requiem has a really cool chorus in my opinion. I'm going to try and stop saying "in my opinion" at the end of every sentence because that's apparent. The title track of this album is also an earworm. I'm quite fond of the song Ashes, as it mellows out the album in the middle there, breaks up the pace of it, which I do enjoy, those lulls in the album. But it might just be the version that I listened to, but the production sounded like crap to me. But the song Ashes leads very nicely into a fucking excellent song, Burn the Eyes, a 7-minute opus. I just fucking love that song. And Fall Into Grey's guitar leads are just delicious. I also like the solo in My Hatred as well. And then When All the Light Dies is a really cool closer. It has a cool, dense, descending riff and a great solo. And the transition from that to A View of Burning Empires sends the album out really well, actually. I think they really did stick the landing with that. Overall, very thrashy album, bordering on death metal, or mellow death, potentially. But overall, not a dreadful first attempt. One thing I will say, as a person who absolutely loves Matt Heafy's vocal technique, with this blend of cleans with his gruff vocals, I feel like this album holds his weakest vocal performance for me. At least for his cleans. I feel like his clean vocals don't quite hit for me as well as they do on other albums. But this is their first album, and he will get better. He'll get so much better. This whole band will just age like the finest of wines. But yeah, that was Ember to Inferno. Now we move on to my 9th favourite Trivium album, which is The Crusade. This one, to give context, followed Ascendancy, and I don't think it quite lived up to it. The production quality took a step back from Ascendancy, I felt, but the songwriting was still excellent. In fact, it did improve in some areas compared to the previous outing, which, like I say, was Ascendancy. Ignition has a cool, catchy chorus. The acoustic strings in there are also really cool. Detonation, Unrepentant, and Becoming the Dragon are all really cool thrashes in my opinion. Entrance of the Conflagration has really cool hooks in it, and the lead riff is really catchy as well. The solo as well I'm quite fond of in that song. The solo in Anthem We Are the Fire is also brilliant. Sadness Will Sear is a slower, dirgier song as well. To the Rats is a song to straight up just open up the pit to as well. And the solo in This World Can't Tear Us Apart is just so good. Tread the Floods is simply just epic epic in grandeur. Contempt breeds contamination, another amazing solo. The title track also has some excellent lead work in it. The song, however, maybe goes on a tiny bit too long, but I did enjoy the absence of vocals on here. It gave the song a bit of an edge over the others. The takeaway of this album is great riffs, great solos. If you're a fan of guitars in Trivium, this might be your favourite album, and it's hard not to blame you there. My only gripe with it is maybe there's a tiny bit too much filler. The Rising and Vengeance didn't really grab me, but the Broken One has a cool chorus. Overall, not a bad album, not a bad record at all. Right, now we move on to the 8th spot, which is Silence in the Snow, the only Trivium album I don't own physically. I remember not being very fond of this one originally. Even though the most popular complaint on this one is the complete absence of Matt Heafy's growl vocals, that isn't the reason this album didn't grab me. In fact, that has never really been an issue with me when it comes to Trivium. In fact, that does kind of annoy me, that sort of surface level criticism, like, it's not heavy enough, is the thing that ends up getting echoed around the fan base when surrounding an album. I just feel like it's not very productive. In fact, with the absence of the gruff vocals on this album, I believe Matt kind of makes up for it with his cleans. Because I feel like this album holds some of the best, most lush, crooning clean vocals that Matt has ever done, in my opinion. But going into the tracks, Snowfall has cool violin work in there, does a good job at setting the tone of the album, which that then leads into the title track, which has a cool rhythm and decent hooks in there as well. Blind Leading the Blind is the first song to fully grab my attention on this album though. That one has cool riffs and even cooler vocal melodies. Dead and Gone and Ghost That's Haunting You are two really good headbangers. The chorus of The Thing That's Killing Me is catchy, and the solo in there is also pretty sick, I won't lie. And my favourite song on this album, by far, is Rise Above the Tides. That's the song that I loved the most when I originally listened to this album, and it's still the song that I enjoy the most going back to it now. The lead riff, the vocal work, the chorus, the solo, the key change at the end of the song. It's all great. It just makes up for a great song for me. Beneath the Sun is a fun, slower, sort of dirgy track. Breathe in the Fire I really enjoyed. That was a nice, faster, thrashier moment on the album. The reason this did fall in the ranks is just there weren't as many songs that really stuck with me, compared to other Trivium albums at least. But it's not a bad album, unlike some people might suggest. But now we move on to the 7th spot on the list. I might get some hate for this one. Ascendancy. This is a classic through and through, one of the staple metalcore albums, dare I say. But much like Silence in the Snow, there aren't that many tracks that really grabbed me. That's not to say that this album is shite. In fact, I'm saying quite the opposite. None of these albums are dreadful. It's just the nature of this video that you have to put a number to these, right? End of Everything kicks off the album with an epic cinematic quality, and that song leads into Rain very nicely. Speaking of Rain, a thrashy banger to set the pace of the album. Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr, that has a cool catchy chorus as well. Drowned and Torn Asunder, the lead and the solo in there, and the chorus, it's just triumphant and epic. Title track has a cool chuggy riff. Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation, that song has a really good solo. Light to the Flies is the track on here that feels closest to Ember to Inferno, but here that sort of style I think was nailed on that song here. As for Dying in Your Arms, that lead riff is really cool, but that song did definitely feel like they were looking for a more radio accessible song, which does make it stick out a bit like a sore thumb compared to the rest of the album, but that doesn't make it bad, it just makes it different, and different's fine, different's good. Deceived is fast and heavy, just a headbanger. Suffocating Sight and Departure are also just two absolute thrashy monsters. Also, shout out to the Master of Puppets cover on this album. Or on the deluxe version, I should say. Speaking of the deluxe version, the bonus tracks. Washing Away Me in the Tides and Blinding Tears Break the Skies. Excellent stuff. I was very impressed with this being only their 2nd album. When I was listening to all of their albums in order of release, jumping from Ember to Inferno to this, the glow up was insane. I was so blown away by the leap in quality between the 1st and 2nd album. Last little note on here to tie up what I said about Matt Heafy's vocals on Ember to Inferno. This is where Matt really finds his signature vocal style. His clean sound, heavy, but also melodic. and his gruffs just get even heavier as time goes on. And also a quick note about the production. Spot on. Better balance of heaviness and melody. It's great. Right, now we move on to the 6th spot on the list, which is In the Court of the Dragon, their latest release. Though it's not new anymore, it is their most recent one, and this is where a band needs to be at this stage in their career. But let's go through the tracks. X, or 10. As far as intro tracks go by Trivium, that one isn't my favourite. It's got a cool, like, entering the arena vibe, but it does go on a bit too long. But it does lead on very nicely into the title track, in which the chorus in there, once again, is just such an earworm. I always find myself humming the vocal melody just out of nowhere after listening to this album as well. Sword Over Damocles manages to keep the intensity and energy that was created on the first song, the title track. Moving on to Feast of Fire. With that track being so hooky and also so melodic, that it's no surprise that this was made a single. I enjoy it though, it's a great track. Crisis of Revelation loses my attention a little bit during the listening process of the album. Nothing necessarily wrong with the song, but the album immediately pulls me back in with the next track, Shadow of the Abattoir, which is just a 7-minute opus, beautiful power ballad of sorts. And then following that up with No Way Back Just Through. Excellent song. It's just so heavy, as the name of the song suggests. It's just Rochambeau for the entire 4-minute runtime of that song. Again, Fall Into Your Hands loses me a bit towards the back end of the song. Maybe it could have been trimmed down a tad with it being 8 minutes, but that might just be me. But once again, the album pulls me back in with Dawn to Decadence, which is just another brilliantly brutal modern Trivium moment that my ape brain was just so fucking happy to hear, just heaviness and intensity. And then Phalanx, if I'm pronouncing that song name correctly. That's a cool closer, but maybe once again it suffers from the length. Could have been trimmed down a tad, at least based on my preference. Huge props to Matt and the rest of Trivium for creating this absolutely killer album during COVID, by the way. This album, and in fact, what I'm about to say applies to the last 3 or 4 albums by Trivium. These newer albums by this band have captured a greater sense of grandeur and cinematic quality that just makes them feel just epic. But yeah, that was Court of the Dragon. Now we're in the top 5. And at the 5th spot, we have Vengeance Falls. Now, I was expecting this to land in at number 2. Let me just get that out of the gate right away. This isn't a popular album by most of the fan base, but I don't think it's necessarily hated. But for me, this album, as well as my number 1 spot on this list, those 2 albums really got me into Trivium and made me a full-on fan. I love that Brave the Storm just kicks the doors in for this album. No preamble, just straight to the punch. Just an excellent song. The chorus in that song is also catchy as hell. Title track is also very riff driven. The lead riff is really cool in there. Strife is a classic for a reason. No Way to Heal, Believe, and Through Blood, Dirt and Bones are all very, very catchy tracks. Lots of hooks everywhere, lush melodies, just earworms through and through. Moving on to At the End of This War. Absolutely phenomenal track, in my opinion at least. It manages to break up the breakneck pace of the album for slower, more dense riffage. The acoustic moment at the start, I really enjoy so much. The chorus melody in Villainy Thrives, I find myself humming that thing all the bloody time. A younger me would have put this at number 1, just based on the nostalgia factor and the amount of emotional attachment I have to all the songs I just mentioned. However, this album does fall off a bit for me after Villainy Thrives. Wake, The End Is Nigh, and The Broken World lose my attention somewhat going back to this one now. The bonus tracks do save this album somewhat for me now though. As I'm Exploding, No Hope for the Human Race and Skulls are all fucking excellent songs. I think any one of those songs could have replaced the closing 2 tracks on the album that I'm not that fond of. Overall, I love this one. I remember this one not getting received very well by audiences though. Again, nothing damning or Saint Anger like, it's just I don't see it talked about very often amongst fans, and I wanted to set that record straight. The main criticism with this one that I heard was that they sacrificed some of the heaviness for more melody above all else, which personally I don't mind. But again, that sort of surface level criticism when it comes to metal music is just such an eye roll for me. If heaviness is all you're looking for in metal, then you do you, bud, but it's not what I look for. Well, sometimes I do, but it's not all I look for. Again, that album felt way more anthemic and melodic than some of their other albums, which might be why I loved it so much when I was younger and still have an emotional, like, nostalgic attachment to it now. But yeah, that was Vengeance Falls. Right, my fourth favourite Trivium album is going to be What the Dead Men Say. Again, this might be a hot take. I don't see many Trivium fans rating this one very highly. Not due to any fault of its own. Might be due to when it came out because of COVID. But in my opinion, this album displays a full dynamic range of what later Trivium is capable of. IX, or 9, is a really excellent hype build to the title track in my opinion. The lead melody that goes from 9 to What the Dead Men Say just creates tension so perfectly, and the bridge to the chorus is heavy as fuck on that song. The descending riff in there as well is just massive. Catastrophist has a cool catchy chorus. Amongst Shadows and Stones, one of the heaviest Trivium tracks. Also, the vocals in that track are heavy hitting, yet also melodic and catchy. It's very well done, that one. Bleed Into Me, once again, a great song to break up the breakneck pace of the album, to give us a slower bass-driven, almost power ballad. The Defiance verse and bridge just have a breakneck pace to them, but they manage to transition into a really gorgeous, lush chorus. And the key change at the end of that song just gives me goosebumps. The melodies in that song as well, just mwah, chef's kiss. The lead riff in Sickness Unto You is just so tension-filled. I love it. The chorus in Scattering the Ashes is so catchy thanks to Matt Heafy's clean vocals. Bending the Arc to Fear's riff is off-kilter and just unsettling and massive. Very, very heavy song. And I just love the solo in The Ones We Leave Behind, the closing track. That song just sends off the album on a high note. I said this with Court of the Dragon, but I'll say it again here, considering those two albums were only a year apart, which, by the way, what the fuck? How have you made two killer albums in just over a year? But this is how a band should sound at this stage in their career. Just young and hungry. Oh, so good. Again, I don't know why this album just gets overlooked by the fan base, but this album really helped me through the first lockdown, man. So maybe it's just sentimental reasons for my love for this one, but game's a game, and this album's great. I love it. I really do. Alright, we're in the top 3 now, and at the number 3 spot we have The Sin and the Fucking Sentence. First of all, this is their first album with drummer Alex Bent. They fucking landed on their feet with his drumming skill. The title track kicks off the album with just an absolute bang, and the kick up in the drums is just so apparent. Beyond Oblivion's like downtrodden riff is just infectious. Other Worlds has a really cool, dense atmosphere to it. As for Heart From Your Hate, definitely a song they were looking to make a single out of, but that song is just so anthemic with the vocal melodies and the hooky chorus. I love that one. I think it's great. Betrayer, however, is a fast, spiteful little ball of anger. That song just has great energy, and might be my favourite on the album, though that song does have stiff competition. Wretchedness Inside, obviously, is a headbanger through and through. Endless Nights has a cool, like, swinging chorus melody. Sever the Hand, however, that song has an unnerving tone. But then it breaks out into this anthemic chorus. I just really dig that song. I think it's excellent. So multifaceted. Beauty and the Sorrow. A deep cut on this album that I don't hear people talking about. Though I do hear a lot of love for this album, that song doesn't get enough love. That song is just so beautifully mellow, but it still has some really heavy moments in there as well. The Revanchist is a slower dirge in the latter end of the album, which just takes its time. Quickest 7 minutes on the album, in my opinion. And then Thrown Into the Fire is a thrashy banger. Exciting way to close this album. But a mention is very much deserving to the bonus tracks. I Don't Want to Be Me and Kill the Poor covers are just so fucking brilliant and so much fun to listen to. But it absolutely fucking perplexes me that Drowning in the Sound was a cut song from Sin in the Sentence. How did this happen, Trivium? The energy on this album overall is just insane. I was so fucking into this album when it came out, and my enthusiasm towards it has not waned over the years. I still have so much fun spinning this album to this day. It's so good. But now, we move on to the number 2 spot, the second place album. I was in pain trying to decide where these top 3 or 4 albums would land, but I came to the decision that Shogun was my second favourite Trivium album. This fucking album came out of nowhere. Okay, listen, I'll be the first to admit this. When listening to the entire discography of this band in preparation for this ranking was the first time that I listened to Shogun all the way through. Part of the reason I hadn't before then is because I've never really liked the whole groupthink consensus of this one album is the best thing I've ever done and nothing else. And that's a comment I've heard for Shogun. Everyone loves Shogun. And so naturally I thought, well, that's bollocks. I'm just not going to listen to it then. Maybe that's just the inner contrarian in me coming out. But I just expected everyone to be wrong. I expected people who praise this album are just people who haven't actually listened to it but want to just vocalize the most popular opinion that they've seen with the band. But I'm very, very pleased to report that I was wrong and Shogun is amazing. When going into this ranking, I genuinely expected this to land at the number 7th spot or something, which is why I am so surprised even now that I have landed this at number 2, but I really fucking loved it. Now, again, there are songs from this album that I have loved from day one. Down from the Sky, Into the Mouth of Hell We March, The Calamity, Upon the Shores, Poison Knife and the Noose. You get the idea, the Iron Maiden cover. But beyond those songs, I never really gave this album a chance, until now. But let's just go through it. Now get ready, I'm about to butcher some of these song names. But Kirisute Gomen is a fucking amazing opening track. Such a grandiose way to kick off the album. It sounds so doomy before it just explodes. As far as Trivium opening tracks go, this one knocked it out of the park. It sets us up for something different, and when I was listening to this album, I felt like I was in for something different. Even down to just the final lyric in the song just saying, no turning back. It was just so hype. And it was apt as well. There is no turning back once you put on Shogun. There's no going back. You're just gonna love Shogun. The opening riff on Torn Between Skyla and Charybdis. Yes, I probably butchered that song name too, but that song is amazing. That song just has dissonance and just a really epic vibe. Down from the Sky is probably my favourite track on the album, though I probably need to give this album more time before I make a decision like that. Into the Mouth of Hell We March is a classic Trivium song for a reason. Throes of Perdition is an absolute earworm. Insurrection is a thrashy fucking bastard and is definitely a popular track on here for a damn reason. The Calamity has a really hooky chorus that I really enjoy as well. The riff in that song as well just feels so massive. He Who Spawned the Furies is slow and deliberate and creepy. That song is just so heavy. The solo in Prometheus and the Crucifix is just so fucking brilliant. That song is just high octane fun. There's also a really catchy chorus in Like Callisto to a Star in Heaven. Yes, I did memorise that song name because it is that good. And then the title track. Oh fuck me, the title track. Quickest fucking 12 minutes of my fucking life. That might be one of my new favourite Trivium songs, is Shogun, the song. I was just so blown away. What a bloody way to send off your album. Holy shit, man. Again, I wouldn't have minded if the title track was double in length. I wouldn't have cared. It would have been so good. Now moving on to the bonus tracks. Upon the Shores and Poison Knife and the Noose are excellent as well, evidently. I've always loved those. And also shout out to the Iron Maiden cover. The production on here is great. I apologise for it taking me this long to listen to this album from front to back. It's shameful. I'm ashamed that it took me this long. But hopefully I've redeemed myself by placing this at number 2. And if I'd had longer with this album, it could have even placed number 1. But it might be too soon to say. But now... shit. Now we do move on to my number 1, which you all know what it is. It is In Waves. I kind of knew this would be number 1. The fact this album is a masterpiece is enough of a reason, but also the nostalgia I have towards this one and the amount of tracks that I come back to on the regular with this one is just so good. The atmosphere building on this is great. The litany of just hits on this album is great. Let's go through it. Capsizing the Sea, creepy and perfectly builds into the title track in waves. The lead melody and groove in the title track is just infectious. Inception of the End, again, has catchy hooks and chuggy goodness. That's an excellent song. Dusk Dismantled is just a bone-crushingly heavy track. The chorus of Watch the World Burn is so catchy. That song overall is just fun and fast. Same with the song Black. Lots of tasty hooks. As for Skyline Severance, that song just kicks off with a really epic ascending lead. Built to Fall is such an earworm, from the vocals to the guitar harmonies. It's great. Caustic, The Ties That Bind is just really fun and thrashy, and the leads are epic once again. I love when I reach the 2-minute mark in that song and it just mellows out to a somber moment. It's great. Forsake Not the Dream, that might be my favourite Trivium song, bar none, far and away. Chaos Reigns is fucking heavy as all get out. And then the choice to send out this album on a slower, more mellow moment with All These Yesterdays was just a fucking smart decision. And then transitioning from that to Leaving This World Behind bookends this thing brilliantly. Listening to this front to back is just an experience. And the thing that propels this thing to the tippity top of my list is the extended version. For context, I love this album that much that I have both versions, but the extended one is what you need in your life. Because it's that version that has Drowning in Slow Motion, which is one of the heaviest Trivium songs of all time. It also has A Grey So Dark, which is also a really fun track. And including Shattering the Skies Above was a great choice, and I always welcome a Slave New World cover as well, because Sepultura. Even Ensnare the Sun expands the dense atmosphere that this album has. Whether you pick the extended one or the studio one, you can't go wrong. You get the widest range of heaviness on this album, from Trivium's most brutal moments all the way to some of their most mellow, lush, gorgeous stuff ever. This album just reaches such a wide variety of motions for me. This album just has everything that Trivium is amazing at on display. It's empowering, it's dense, it's heavy as fuck, and it's soulful. One of my favourite albums of all time, this is. It really is. But that will conclude this ranking video. Did you agree with my list? Probably not, but that's what's so great about music, it's all subjective. But yeah, that has been me ranking all 10 of Trivium's studio albums. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.